In 1986, workers digging a clay pit in southern China broke through into a hole packed with bronze. Hundreds of faces, staring up out of the dark. Giant eyes pushed out on stalks. Ears too big for any human head. Nothing like them exists anywhere else in the ancient world, and the people who made them left no name, no writing, and no explanation. The place is called sanxingdui, 3-star mounds, on the Chengdu Plain in Sichuan, in the far southwest of China. For most of the 20th century it was farmland. Nothing about the surface said empire. Nothing said anything at all. Then, one afternoon in the summer of 1986, a crew making bricks for a local factory drove their tools into a patch of ground and hit something that wasn't clay. It was jade. Then bronze. Then more bronze than any of them had ever seen in one place. What they had walked into was a pit, deliberately dug, deliberately filled, stacked with objects a Bronze Age civilization had made and then destroyed. And when the archaeologists arrived and cleared the earth away, the faces came up out of the ground looking straight at them. They were masks. Human in shape, but wrong in every proportion. Broad, flat features. Sharp eyebrows. Mouths set in a thin, knowing line. And the eyes. On the largest masks, the pupils don't sit flat. They project forward on cylinders, like the eyes are reaching out of the face toward you. Some are nearly 1.5 meters wide. The ears flare out like wings. Here is the first strange thing. This was the Bronze Age, roughly the same centuries when the Shang dynasty ruled the Yellow River Valley, hundreds of kilometers to the north. We know the Shang well. Their bronzes, their oracle bones, their writing. And nothing the Shang ever made looks anything like this. Whoever knelt in the dirt at sanxingdui was staring at a civilization that history had completely forgotten. The question was simple, and no one could answer it. Who made these? And where did they go? To understand how strange sanxingdui is, you have to see what came out of those pits. Start with the tree. Rising out of the fragments, archaeologists reconstructed a bronze structure nearly 4 meters tall, a sacred tree, its branches curling upward, hung with bronze fruit and birds, a dragon coiling down the trunk. It is one of the largest single bronze artifacts to survive from the entire ancient world, and it was cast by a culture we can't even name. Then the figure. A life-size bronze man, over 2.5 meters tall, counting his pedestal, standing rigid, robed in patterned garments, his enormous hands curled into rings as if once holding something we no longer have. He is the oldest and largest standing bronze human figure known from ancient China. And then the gold. Not much, but enough to stop you cold. A gold funerary mask, thin as foil, beaten to fit over a bronze face, a gleam of gold on a metal head 3,000 years old. A gold staff, nearly 1.5 meters long, engraved with fish, birds, and arrows, wrapped around a wooden core that is almost entirely rotted away. Gold, at this scale, worked this way, is another thing the Shang heartland simply did not do. Jade blades. Bronze animals. And, laid across it all, dozens of elephant tusks, real ivory, from real elephants, in a place where you would not expect them. But here is the part that turns wonder into mystery. Almost none of it was buried whole. The masks were shattered. The tree was broken into pieces. Many objects were burned first, scorched, cracked by heat, then smashed, then packed into the pits and covered over. This was not a tomb. Nobody was buried here. Something else was going on. And whatever it was, they meant to do it. So who were they? The honest answer is that we are still not certain. But we have a leading candidate, and it comes from the one thing sanxingdui didn't leave us. Words. Sanxingdui has no writing. None. No inscriptions on the bronzes, no oracle bones, no records of any kind have been found at the site. For a civilization advanced enough to cast a 4-meter tree, that silence is deafening. They could organize thousands of workers, control metal and gold and ivory, and build a walled city, but they either never wrote, or wrote on something that has completely vanished. Because they left no records, we have to borrow their name from someone else. Centuries later, Chinese texts describe an ancient kingdom in this exact region called Shu, a place their neighbors regarded as remote, half-legendary, ruled by kings with strange names and, in the oldest stories, protruding eyes. Most archaeologists now link sanxingdui to this early Shu culture. But linking a pile of bronze to a name in a much later legend is not the same as knowing who these people were. Where did their style come from? Those forward-thrusting eyes, those winged ears, that particular way of casting a human face. No one has found the tradition that produced them. They don't grow out of Shang art. They don't obviously come from anywhere. And that's where the temptation starts. The masks are so alien that people reach for aliens, for Atlantis, for lost supercontinents, for anything to explain the strangeness. Resist it. The evidence points to a homegrown Bronze Age culture of the Sichuan Basin, in contact with the wider world through trade, that developed its own utterly distinctive vision. The mystery isn't that they came from the stars. The mystery is that they came from right here, and we still can't fully read them. But that only sharpens the real question. If this was their treasure, their gods, their sacred tree, why did they burn it all and bury it in the dark? Picture the pits again, but this time picture the day they were filled. The objects show the sequence. First, fire. Many bronzes are scorched. Ivory and other materials show burning. Then the breaking, masks cracked, the tree pulled apart, the standing figures whirled shattered into fragments. Then the burial, everything laid down in layers inside pits cut into the ground, and sealed. Why would anyone do this to their own sacred objects? We don't know for certain, but archaeologists have theories, and they're worth sitting with. One idea: this was a ritual sacrifice, the objects killed and offered to the gods or the ancestors, the way a sword is sometimes bent before it goes into a grave. Another, a change of dynasty or belief, one order sweeping away the sacred images of the last. Another still, catastrophe, a flood, an earthquake, an invasion, that forced a people to bury their gods before they fled. What almost every theory shares is this: it was intentional, and it was final. After the pits were filled, the great phase of sanxingdui ended. The city's center faded. The people, or their power, moved on, and the faces stayed in the dark, waiting 3,000 years for a brick worker's shovel. For a while, historians thought that was the whole story. 2 pits, 1986, a spectacular one-time find. Then, decades later, the ground opened again, and it turned out we had only seen the beginning. Long before 1986, there had been a hint. Back in 1929, a local farmer digging near his home turned up a cache of jade, the first clue that something ancient lay under these fields. But it took until 1986 for the pits to reveal the bronze, and then, for over 30 years, sanxingdui went quiet again. Then, starting in 2019 and continuing through 2020, 2021 and 2022, archaeologists went back and found 6 more pits. This time they came prepared. The new pits were excavated under sealed glass enclosures, with climate control, with teams in protective suits working millimeter by millimeter. And what they pulled out was staggering. Thousands of new objects. More bronze masks. More gold, including additional gold masks. Delicate bronze altars and figures more intricate than anything from the first pits. And, astonishingly, traces of silk, evidence that this culture was working silk into its rituals 3,000 years ago. Some of the new bronzes fit the old ones, a fragment from a new pit joining a piece found in 1986, two halves of the same shattered object separated by 35 years and a few meters of earth. Sanxingdui wasn't a single lucky strike. It was a whole ritual landscape, buried in one deliberate act, and we are still only pulling back the first layer. And the more we find, the louder the silence gets, because none of it comes with a single written word to tell us what it means. Line it all up. A city on the Chengdu Plain, 3,000 years old. Bronze faces with eyes that reach toward you and ears like wings. A 4-meter sacred tree. Gold masks and a gold staff. Ivory, jade, silk. A civilization sophisticated enough to command all of it, and not one line of writing to say who they were, what they believed, or why, one day, they burned their gods, broke them, and buried them in the ground. We call them Shu because a later legend gives us a name to borrow. We call the burial a sacrifice because we can't imagine what else it was. We say the origins are debated because the truth is we don't know. Every honest answer at sanxingdui ends in the same place. A bronze face, staring back at us across 30 centuries, refusing to say a word. That's not a failure of archaeology. That's the rarest thing the ancient world can offer, a civilization advanced, wealthy, and utterly strange, that reached the modern age with its mystery completely intact. Somewhere under the fields of Sichuan, there may be more pits still waiting, and maybe, one day, the writing that finally lets these faces speak. Until then, they just keep looking back at us. If this changed how you see the ancient world, subscribe. We reconstruct a lost civilization every week.